what are the topics in class 11 physics? So let us see, lesson wise, topic wise. So the syllabus details in lesson wise, if you see, the first lesson is physical world. In physical world, the entire syllabus starts with a simple question, that is, what is physics? But in this they will cover entire the introduction to the physics. So what is physics? So what type of concept will be covered in the physics here will be covered in the lesson, and as well as what is the relation between physics, technology and science, and as well as some scientist information, means their inventions, their discoveries, and nothing but their great contribution to the physics will be covered in the syllabus. And as well as at last, fundamental forces in nature. 4 fundamental forces are there, so those will be covered in this. So here just I am giving introduction to all the topics, so that is why I am not explaining anything, just I am giving the details what covered in the syllabus. The next lesson, that is units and measurements. So from this lesson easily you can identify so units of the physical quantities. So here in this lesson, number of physical quantities they will cover. Indirectly you can say it is the introduction to all the lessons in +1 as well as +2. So the details about system of units. So physical quantities introduction, and as well as for each physical quantity units will be there. So for the units different systems are there, CGS, MKS, FES. So that is a system of units and the basic details will be there, and as well as dimensional formula of physical quantities. So it's a one type of formula. With this we can get the relation between different physical quantities, and we can derive some new formulae to explain the natural phenomena of physics. Next, so if you are measuring something, so definitely errors will be there. So in this lesson, units and measurements, so in those measurements what are the errors and what type of errors will come while measuring, those details will be there. Next lesson, motion in a straight line. So in particularly different type of motions are there, but in this lesson if a body moving in only one dimension, so what are the properties exhibited by it, those details will be covered in this lesson. So mostly average velocity, average acceleration and relative velocity and motion under gravity. So it's a simple example, freely falling body. If you release a body from a particular height, it will come towards the earth surface in one direction, it will follow a linear motion, so nothing but it's a motion under gravity. So for that a simple example I will give. So in 9th class only many people learn this one. So according to our syllabus point of view, in class 11, so topics if you observe, S equals to ut plus half at square, V equals to u plus at, and V square minus u square equals to 2as. So these details simply we are calling as kinematics. So not only that, this is a here nothing but acceleration. For example, instead of acceleration if you say acceleration due to gravity, so then the formula will turn like this. So those details we are going to learn. So in lower classes direct formula, maybe now derivations will be there for these equations in this syllabus. Next, motion in a plane. So previous lesson, motion in a straight line, if a particle moving only in one direction. Now the particle or a body moving in a plane. Simple example you can take in caroms game. If you strike particles with a striker, all particles will move in a particular plane. So simple example for the particles moving in a plane. So in this lesson the concepts scalar and vector, so that differentiation will be there, and as well as about vector many information will be there, and as well as vector product also will be covered in this dot product, and next coming classes lessons cross product also covered. And mostly in this lesson the concept relates to projectile motion. So important essay also there based on projectile motion, and another one is uniform circular motion. So here in particularly if you pay attention on projectile motion, because it is an essay question, any body thrown other than 90 degrees with a particular initial velocity, so it will follow a parabolic path, that is called projectile. So if you observe the diagram, in that initial velocity, angle of projection, maximum height h, and r range, and t is the time of flight. So in this lesson, so in projectile motion concept, the relation between these physical quantities will be there, and that analysis also will be there. Next lesson, laws of motion. It is a vast lesson, but simply I will cover. So that is about laws of motion, and simply it's a concept of Newton's laws of motion. So Newton laws, impulse, equilibrium of forces, and system of variable mass, and common forces in mechanics and friction. These are all people learn in 9th class and 8th class. So from 8th class onwards, that inertia, Newton's laws of motion will be there, and these basic details to further extension you will learn in this lesson. And mostly here if you observe, system of variable mass is the new word maybe for people. So for that one example, so if you observe a diagram here, picture, so in that the rocket moving upward, so to move the rocket upward, action reaction, but here fuel burning continuously, so due to that the gas jet coming out of the rocket means continuously the mass of the rocket decreasing. So it's a system of variable mass, and the details about that also will be covered in this next lesson, that is work, energy and power. So the details about work, kinetic energy, potential energy, conservation of energy, and as well as power. So those details, in particularly about conservation of energy is an essay question, and as well as collisions. So in collisions also 1D collision and 2D collision, and about power. So these details also there in lower classes. Now further details will be there. So here in particularly collisions is the major concept in this lesson, and as well as conservation of energy. So here 1D elastic collision is an essay. So for example, initially AB are two bodies moving in a particular direction. After collision, here you can see before collision, at the time of collision, after collision, even after collision also the particle moving in the same initial direction. So that is why it is one dimensional collision. After collision, if two bodies are moving in two different directions, that is a two dimensional collision, means both should move in a plane. Next lesson, 7th lesson, is system of particles and rotatory motion. In this lesson, center of mass concept, angular momentum and torque. So here torque means, just observe this diagram. So in this diagram you can see, so force applied at one place, but we are trying to rotate. So here one small nut. So here we are trying to rotate something by applying the force. So here the force, and from the point to the force distance, that perpendicular distance, and F, the product, cross product, we are calling as torque. So simply the action to get linear motion force, the action to get rotatory motion is torque. So those details will be there, and as well as about moment of inertia of rigid bodies and different bodies if they are moving. So simply inertia means, in linear motion we are calling as mass, in rotatory motion mass into square of the perpendicular distance, that is inertia. That inertia for different bodies, that we will discuss in this lesson. Topic will be covered in this lesson. Next, rolling motion. Rolling motion in the sense linear motion as well as rotatory motion, both collectively rolling motion concept also will be there. Next, 8th lesson, and interesting lesson for many people, that is about gravitation. So in gravitation, Kepler laws and Newton's law of gravitation, and about acceleration due to gravity, orbital velocity and escape velocity. Orbital velocity means if any particle has to rotate around a particular planet, it should have a velocity. So that velocity rotate in that orbital velocity. Another one, escape velocity. A body should escape from a particular planet. How much velocity a body should have? That is escape velocity. Those details will be there. And as well as gravitational kinetic energy, potential energy and total energy topics will be covered. So in that, old basic theory is Kepler law. So Kepler 3 laws are there. With these 3 laws, planets revolving around the elliptical orbit by around the sun by keeping sun at one of its foci. So that is a theory, that analysis you can learn in this gravitation lesson. You can see the diagram, simply just elliptical motion of the planet around the sun. Next, 9th lesson, mechanical properties of solids. So in this lesson, elastic properties. So elasticity means if you apply the force on a particular body, the body will get strained. But if our force is within the limit of particular value, and if you remove the force immediately, if the body can attain its original state, then you can say the body is having the elasticity. So it can regain its original shape and position. So that property, elastic property details will be there in this lesson. So in particularly by designing some physical quantities, means Young's modulus, bulk modulus, rigidity modulus, with those modulus the total elastic properties are explained in this lesson. So simply we can think about solids. In solids all atoms are very close, and between the atoms you can imagine one invisible string. So if you try to change the distance between the atoms, as like if you try to apply the force, the spring will elongate little bit. If you remove the force, immediately due to restoring force of the spring, again atoms will come to the same initial positions. So the reason for elasticity they explained, and the details relations between these will be there in this lesson. Next, 10th lesson. So in last lesson we covered about solids, means in the syllabus it covered about solids. Now it is concept of fluids. Fluids means which can flow. So which can flow means generally liquids and as well as gases also, which can flow. In these, detailed properties of liquids covered in this syllabus. So in that, Pascal's law, surface tension, viscosity, Bernoulli theorem and angle of contact are major topics. Many are there, just a few I mentioned here. So Pascal's law, just disc brake concept, and as well as about surface tension. So every surface is having a particular property, you can see in the diagram. So if you keep any, so different radii of cross section tubes, if you keep according to the diagram, see here different heights rays you can observe. This is called capillary rays. So here the surface is having certain caliber to hold certain weight, means the surface is having a certain temper to hold a particular weight. So that is why that much liquid it raised, that is capillarity, but due to surface tension it happened. So that phenomena due to surface tension, that means every surface is having certain the property. So it is purely a liquid phenomena. And as well as about viscosity, just observe the diagram. So here honey, so as for example, if you take a water and if you try to pour like this, then easily water will go down, but honey will not go like this. Reason, it is having the viscous nature, means viscosity. So those details you are going to learn. Next, 11th lesson, thermal properties. So mechanical properties over. Now in thermal properties we are going to learn about heat and radiation, means in this syllabus they covered about heat and radiation. So in that, due to heating the material will get expand. So coefficient of expansion, linear expansion, area expansion, volume expansion concepts, and calorimetry means heat neither be created nor destroyed. So those concept means the loss of heat by one body and gain of heat by another body, so both will be equal. So that is equilibrium of heat. And as well as thermal conductivity and thermal radiation and Newton's law of cooling concepts are covered in this lesson. Next lesson, thermodynamics. So in this we will learn different process in the lesson. Those are isothermal, adiabatic, isobaric, isochoric. So these processes with simple definitions. For example, temperature constant isothermal and heat constant adiabatic, pressure constant isobaric, volume constant isochoric. Those process details will be there, and as well as the thermodynamic laws and very important essay question, Carnot heat engine. So many essays are there in this isothermal adiabatic process, work done also essays, and as well as Carnot engine one essay. Next lesson, that is kinetic theory of gases. So in previous lessons, mechanical properties of solids, fluids completed. So only particularly about gases concepts will be covered in this lesson. So those are velocity of gases. So the three different type of velocities are there: RMS velocity, average velocity, most probable velocity, those details, and as well as Maxwell assumptions to explain the behavior of the gas, and with his assumptions he able to derive kinetic gas equation also, so which give the details about pressure of the gas in terms of some physical quantities of gas, and as well as different specific heats of the gas also covered, and as well as mean free path. Next lesson, that is oscillation. So in this lesson, a special type of motion, that is simple harmonic motion, those details will be covered, and as well as time period of simple pendulum, and so SHM, simple harmonic motion. Similarly, two more are there. One is DHM, damped harmonic motion, that basic details only, as well as basic details of forced harmonic motion. So in this lesson, mostly the concept will be covered based on simple harmonic motion. So for that, just observe the diagram. In the diagram, for example, here it is a frictionless surface. You just pressed the mass, then the string will be compressed. Afterwards, if you release, then continuously the mass will move between plus a and minus a for suppose. Then this type of motion we are calling a simple harmonic motion. So without loss of amplitude, about a fixed point any body is moving through and flow, then that is simple harmonic motion. Those properties will be covered in this lesson. And lastly, waves lesson. So in waves lesson, longitudinal and transverse waves, and waves concept in lower class, so like simply amplitude, wavelength, frequency, crest, trough. Not only that, so in this lesson in particularly the type of waves, and as well as about open pipe and closed pipe, and vibrations in stretched string. So different type of frequencies. So these frequencies in string, such like in guitar, so different wire, so different vibration, different frequency will come out. Those details will be there, and as well as Doppler effect is a major essay question. So that means the relative frequency heard by the observer is different. For example, source, sound source, and observer both are at rest. The frequency heard by the observer is exactly equals to the frequency delivered by the source. But if the source is coming towards the observer or moving away from the observer, then the frequency heard by the observer will be different. For that, he derived expressions also. Those details will be there in this lesson. This is the syllabus covered for class 10, class 12 physics, class 11 physics.